She won the lottery and kept it secret. Years later, the truth tore their marriage apart. The aroma of freshly baked apple pie wafted through the cozy living room, a comforting scent that had become a Friday night ritual in the Peterson household. Eleanor Peterson, a woman with a warm smile and eyes that sparkled with kindness, carefully placed the pie on the windowsill to cool. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across their modest garden. Eleanor and her husband James had lived in the quiet town of Willow Creek for over 30 years. Their life was a tapestry woven with the simple threads of routine and contentment. James, a man of few words but unwavering dedication, worked as a carpenter, his calloused hands bearing testament to years of honest labor. Eleanor, the heart of their home, filled their days with warmth, laughter, and the comforting rhythm of domesticity. Their two-story house, painted a cheerful shade of yellow, stood as a symbol of their shared dreams and sacrifices. The mortgage, a constant presence in their lives, was a reminder of their commitment to building a secure future. They weren't wealthy, but they had each other, and that, they both believed, was all that truly mattered. James, a man of traditional values, believed in the sanctity of hard work and the importance of providing for his family. He took pride in his ability to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. Eleanor, while sharing his values, also possessed a quiet strength and an independent spirit. She managed their finances with a careful hand, stretching their modest income to cover their needs and occasional indulgences. Their marriage, like any other, had weathered its share of storms. Disagreements over finances, differing opinions on raising their now-grown children, and the occasional pang of unfulfilled dreams had tested their bond. But through it all, their love for each other remained the anchor, keeping them grounded in the face of life's uncertainties. As the twilight deepened, James returned home, his weary footsteps echoing on the porch. Eleanor greeted him with a smile, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the hearth. "Welcome home, dear," she said, her voice a gentle melody. "Dinner will be ready soon." James leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture that spoke volumes of their enduring affection. "Smells wonderful, Ellie," he said, inhaling the sweet aroma of apple pie. Just like old times. They settled into their familiar routine, the comfortable silence between them a testament to their shared history. As they ate dinner, they chatted about their day, the mundane details weaving a tapestry of their ordinary yet precious life. Eleanor, however, carried a secret that had taken root in her heart and blossomed into a tangled web of conflicting emotions. A secret that threatened to disrupt the peaceful rhythm of their lives and challenge the very foundation of their marriage. It had all started a few weeks ago, on a Tuesday afternoon, when Eleanor had decided to buy a lottery ticket on a whim. She rarely played, but something that day had prompted her to take a chance. Little did she know that this impulsive decision would change her life forever. The following Saturday, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, a cup of lukewarm tea forgotten beside her, her eyes glued to the winning lottery numbers printed in the local newspaper. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of disbelief and overwhelming joy. The numbers on her ticket matched perfectly. She had won. The magnitude of her win sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just a small sum, a few $100s to ease the monthly budget. No, this was life-changing, a staggering amount that could erase their mortgage, secure their retirement, and provide a comfortable future for their children. But as the initial euphoria subsided, a wave of uncertainty washed over her. Should she tell James? Should she share this incredible news with the man she loved and trusted above all else? Doubt gnawed at her. James, with his steadfast belief in hard work and his aversion to anything that seemed too good to be true, might not understand. He might even disapprove, accusing her of frivolous spending, or worse, questioning the legitimacy of her win. Fear, an unwelcome guest, crept into her heart. Fear of his reaction, fear of disrupting their comfortable life, fear of losing the familiar rhythm of their existence. A decision began to form in her mind, a decision born of fear and a misguided sense of protection. She wouldn't tell him, not yet. Not until she had a plan, a way to reveal her secret without shattering their world. Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor's secret grew heavier with each passing moment. She carried it like a hidden burden, a weight that pressed down on her conscience. The joy of her win was tainted with guilt, the excitement overshadowed by the constant fear of discovery. She began to withdraw from James, her once open and carefree demeanor replaced by a guarded reserve. She found herself making excuses to avoid his questions, her mind constantly searching for ways to deflect his attention. James, sensing the shift in her behavior, grew concerned. "Ellie, is something bothering you?" he asked one evening, his brow furrowed with worry. Eleanor forced a smile, her heart aching with the weight of her deception. "No, dear, everything's fine," she replied, her voice a strained whisper. But James wasn't convinced. He knew his wife too well, could read the subtle nuances in her expression, the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. He resolved to get to the bottom of it, unaware that his pursuit of the truth would unravel the very fabric of their lives. Meanwhile, Eleanor, trapped in her web of secrecy, began to make subtle changes, careful not to arouse suspicion. She started paying off their bills earlier than usual, claiming to have found a few extra shifts at the local library where she volunteered. She bought new clothes, replacing her worn-out wardrobe with stylish outfits, explaining them away as gifts from her sister. She even surprised James with a new set of tools, a long-held dream of his, attributing the extravagant purchase to a generous discount she had stumbled upon. James, though touched by her thoughtfulness, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Eleanor, walking a tightrope between deception and normalcy, felt the strain taking its toll. The joy of her win was fading, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that threatened to consume her. She longed to confide in James, to share the burden of her secret, but fear held her back. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, James turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. "Ellie," he began, his voice heavy with unspoken questions, "we need to talk." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. Had he discovered her secret? Was this the moment she had dreaded for so long? Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat. "Yes, James?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. James reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle yet firm. "I've noticed you've been distant lately," he said, his voice laced with concern. "Something's changed, Ellie. You're not yourself." Eleanor's mind raced, searching for a plausible explanation, a way to deflect his suspicions. "It's nothing, dear," she said, forcing a smile. "Just a bit tired, that's all." But James wasn't buying it. "Don't lie to me, Ellie," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "We've been together for over 30 years. I know when something's wrong." Eleanor's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. She knew she couldn't keep up the pretense any longer. The weight of her secret was suffocating her, the constant fear of discovery a heavy burden on her soul. "It's just," she began, her voice trembling, "it's just that I haven't been entirely honest with you." James's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" Eleanor took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confession. I won the lottery a few weeks ago," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. A stunned silence followed her revelation. James stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. You won the lottery?" he finally stammered, his voice barely audible. Eleanor nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know I should have told you," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "But I was scared. I didn't know how you'd react." James remained silent, his mind reeling from the shock. He had always believed in the virtue of hard work, the idea that success was earned, not bestowed by chance. The thought of his wife winning a life-changing sum of money through sheer luck seemed surreal, almost impossible. "How much?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. Eleanor hesitated, then revealed the staggering amount. James's eyes widened further, his jaw dropping in astonishment. The number echoed in his mind, a figure that seemed to belong to a different reality, a world of unimaginable wealth and luxury. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and hurt. Eleanor reached out to him, her hand trembling. "I was afraid, James," she said, her voice filled with regret. "I thought you wouldn't understand. I thought you'd be angry." James looked at her, his eyes searching hers for answers. He felt a wave of emotions wash over him, disbelief, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. He had always prided himself on being a provider, on his ability to take care of his family. Now this revelation had turned his world upside down. "All these weeks," he said, his voice shaking, "you've been keeping this from me. All this time, we could have. He trailed off, unable to articulate the thoughts swirling in his mind. The comfortable life they had built together, the shared struggles and sacrifices, suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of this newfound wealth. Eleanor reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines etched by years of hard work and worry. "I'm so sorry, James," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I never meant to hurt you, but the damage was done." The seed of doubt had been planted, and it threatened to grow into a chasm of mistrust, separating them in ways they had never imagined. The revelation of Eleanor's win was not the end of their troubles, but rather the beginning of a long and arduous journey, a test of their love and commitment, a challenge that would force them to confront their deepest fears and insecurities. James, unable to face the reality of the situation, retreated to his workshop, the familiar scent of sawdust and wood offering a temporary refuge from the turmoil within him. He spent hours tinkering with his tools, the rhythmic motions a way to channel his restless energy and avoid confronting the emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. Eleanor, left alone with her guilt and regret, wandered through their house, the once familiar rooms now echoing with the silence of their unspoken words. She longed to reach out to James, to explain, to apologize, but the fear of rejection held her back. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them grew wider. The comfortable routine of their lives was shattered, replaced by a strained silence and an unspoken tension that hung heavy in the air. Eleanor, desperate to bridge the gap, tried to initiate conversations, to rekindle the spark of their connection, but her efforts were met with a cold indifference. James, consumed by his hurt and resentment, couldn't bring himself to forgive her, to understand her motives. He felt betrayed, not just by her secrecy, but also by the fact that she had made such a life-altering decision without him. He felt like a bystander in his own life, his role as a provider, as a partner, diminished by her win. Eleanor, sensing his resentment, retreated further into herself, her guilt and fear compounding her isolation. She felt trapped in a gilded cage, her newfound wealth a constant reminder of the happiness it had stolen from her. The joy of her win had vanished, replaced by a gnawing anxiety and a deep sense of loss. She had hoped that the money would bring them security, happiness, a chance to enjoy their golden years without worry. Instead, it had brought them conflict, distance, and the threat of losing the one thing that truly mattered, their love for each other. One evening, as James sat alone in his workshop, a wave of sadness washed over him. He looked around at the tools he had collected over the years, the projects he had completed, the dreams he had nurtured. He realized that his life, the life he had built with Eleanor, was slipping away, and he was powerless to stop it. He thought of Eleanor, her kind heart, her gentle spirit, the way her eyes lit up when she smiled. He remembered the years they had spent together, the shared joys and sorrows, the unwavering support they had given each other. He realized that his anger, his resentment, was pushing her away, creating a chasm between them that threatened to swallow them both. He knew he had to do something, to find a way to bridge the gap, to reclaim the love they had shared for so long. He put down his tools, wiped his hands on his apron, and walked out of the workshop, determined to find Eleanor, to talk to her, to fight for their marriage. The revelation of Eleanor's lottery win and her subsequent anonymous donation sent ripples through the quiet town of Willow Creek. Gossip, like wildfire, spread through the close-knit community, fueling speculation and intrigue. The Petersons, once known for their quiet and unassuming lifestyle, were suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Eleanor, uncomfortable with the newfound attention, found herself the subject of whispered conversations and curious glances. Friends and neighbors, once casual acquaintances, now treated her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Some congratulated her on her good fortune, their words laced with a hint of envy, while others questioned her motives, wondering why she had kept her win a secret for so long. The Petersons' close friends, Martha and George Miller, were particularly perplexed. Martha, Eleanor's confidant for years, felt hurt and betrayed that Eleanor hadn't confided in her. "Why, Ellie?" she asked, her voice laced with disappointment. "Why didn't you tell me? Don't you trust me anymore?" Eleanor, burdened by guilt, struggled to explain her actions. "I was afraid, Martha," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I didn't know who to trust. I thought it would change everything." Martha, though understanding, couldn't help but feel a sense of distance, a crack in the foundation of their friendship. George, a practical man, was more concerned about the impact of the win on the Petersons' relationship. He worried that the sudden influx of wealth would strain their marriage, creating a divide between them that might be impossible to bridge. Meanwhile, James, grappling with his own emotions, found himself increasingly isolated. He felt like an outsider in his own town, the object of pity and speculation. The whispers followed him everywhere he went, a constant reminder of his wife's secret and his own perceived inadequacy. He found himself avoiding social gatherings, preferring the solitude of his workshop to the prying eyes and probing questions of his neighbors. He felt a growing sense of resentment towards Eleanor, not just for keeping the win a secret, but also for the way it had disrupted their lives, turning their peaceful existence into a whirlwind of unwanted attention and scrutiny. The Petersons' children, Sarah and Michael, were equally surprised by the news. Sarah, a pragmatic young woman, was initially excited for her parents, envisioning a comfortable retirement and financial security. However, she soon realized that the win had brought more complications than joy, creating a rift between her parents that threatened to tear their family apart. Michael, the more sensitive of the two, worried about the emotional toll the situation was taking on his parents. He tried to mediate, to encourage them to talk to each other, but his efforts were met with resistance. The once close-knit family, now fractured by secrets and unspoken words, seemed to be drifting apart. As the weeks passed, the initial excitement surrounding the lottery win faded, replaced by a lingering sense of unease. The Petersons, once a pillar of stability in their community, were now a source of gossip and speculation, their lives dissected and analyzed by their neighbors. The weight of the secret, the burden of the win, and the strain on their relationships took its toll on Eleanor and James. They found themselves walking on eggshells, their conversations strained, their silences filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The comfortable familiarity of their marriage, the shared dreams and aspirations, seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of distance and mistrust. The lottery win, once a dream come true, had become a curse, a catalyst for conflict and a test of their love and commitment. They were adrift in a sea of uncertainty, their future clouded by the storm that had engulfed their lives. The silence in the Peterson house was deafening. It wasn't the comfortable silence of shared understanding, but a strained, heavy quiet filled with unspoken words and simmering resentment. Eleanor, her heart heavy with guilt, watched James retreat further into himself, his once warm and open demeanor replaced by a stoic mask. One evening, as the sun cast long shadows across their living room, Eleanor decided to break the silence. "James," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "we can't go on like this." James, who had been staring out the window, turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Like what, Ellie?" he asked, his voice flat. "Like strangers," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're barely speaking, barely even looking at each other. We're drifting apart." James remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on her. "And whose fault is that, Ellie?" he finally asked, his voice laced with bitterness. Eleanor flinched, his words stinging like a slap. "I know it's my fault," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "I made a mistake, a huge mistake. But I never meant to hurt you, James. I never meant to betray your trust." "But you did," James said, his voice rising in anger. "You kept this secret from me, Ellie. You made decisions that affected both of us without even consulting me. How can I ever trust you again?" Eleanor reached out to him, her hand trembling. "Please, James," she pleaded, her voice choked with emotion. "I know I messed up, but please don't give up on us. Don't let this money ruin what we have." James looked at her, his heart aching at the sight of her tears. He loved her, he truly did, but the hurt and betrayal ran deep. He didn't know if he could ever forget what she had done, if he could ever truly trust her again. "I don't know, Ellie," he said, his voice heavy with despair. "I just don't know." The following days were a roller coaster of emotions. Eleanor, determined to salvage their relationship, tried everything she could think of. She cooked his favorite meals, planned outings to their favorite spots, and showered him with affection. But James remained distant, his heart shielded by a wall of hurt and resentment. One evening, after another failed attempt to connect with him, Eleanor broke down. She sat on their bed, sobbing uncontrollably, the weight of her guilt and fear crushing her spirit. James, hearing her cries, entered the room, his heart clenching at the sight of her despair. He sat beside her, his hand hovering hesitantly over her shoulder. "Ellie," he began, his voice soft, "please don't cry. I can't bear to see you like this." Eleanor looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen. "I'm so sorry, James," she sobbed. "I've ruined everything. I've lost you." James gently pulled her into his arms, his embrace tentative at first, then tightening as he felt her trembling against him. "No, Ellie," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You haven't lost me. I'm still here. We're still here." Eleanor clung to him, her tears soaking his shirt. In that moment, amidst the raw pain and vulnerability, a glimmer of hope emerged. They were still connected. Their love, though battered and bruised, still flickered beneath the surface. They spent the next few hours talking, truly talking, for the first time since the revelation of the lottery win. Eleanor poured out her heart, explaining her fears, her insecurities, her misguided attempt to protect him. James listened patiently, his anger slowly dissipating as he began to understand her perspective. He realized that her actions, though misguided, were driven by love, by a desire to preserve their happiness. He confessed his own struggles, his feelings of inadequacy, his fear of being overshadowed by her newfound wealth. He admitted that his pride had been hurt, his sense of self challenged. As they talked, the walls between them began to crumble, the layers of hurt and resentment slowly peeling away. They rediscovered the deep connection they had shared for so long, the love that had weathered countless storms. They realized that the lottery win, though a significant event, was just a chapter in their story, not the defining narrative of their lives. They had a choice to make, to let the money drive them apart or to use it as an opportunity to strengthen their bond, to build a future together, not as a wealthy couple, but as partners, as soulmates. The conversation was not a magical solution to all their problems, but it was a start, a step in the right direction. They had opened the lines of communication, acknowledged their vulnerabilities, and reaffirmed their love for each other. The road ahead would still be challenging, filled with obstacles and uncertainties, but they were no longer adrift in a sea of mistrust and resentment. They had found their anchor, their love for each other, and they were ready to navigate the storm together. A sense of fragile peace settled over the Peterson household. While the hurt lingered, a renewed sense of hope had blossomed. They were communicating again, tentatively navigating the treacherous terrain of their altered reality. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. One crisp autumn morning, a phone call shattered their newfound tranquility. It was Sarah, their daughter, her voice trembling with distress. "Mom, Dad, it's Michael," she choked out. "He's been in an accident." Panic surged through Eleanor and James. They rushed to the hospital, their hearts pounding with fear. Michael, their gentle and artistic son, lay in a hospital bed, his leg mangled, his face pale and drawn. The doctor explained that he had been hit by a drunk driver while cycling home from work. The surgery was successful, but the road to recovery would be long and arduous. As they sat by Michael's bedside, their fear and anxiety mingled with a deep sense of helplessness. The lottery win, once a source of excitement and possibility, now seemed trivial in the face of their son's suffering. The medical bills piled up, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the limitations of even their newfound wealth. Eleanor, without hesitation, decided to use a significant portion of her winnings to cover Michael's expenses, ensuring he received the best possible care. When James learned of her decision, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over him. He was grateful for her generosity, for her unwavering love for their son. But he also felt a pang of resentment, a reminder of her secret, of the power she now wielded. "You didn't have to do that, Ellie," he said, his voice a mixture of gratitude and bitterness. Eleanor looked at him, her eyes filled with sadness. "He's our son, James," she replied softly. "How could I not?" James averted his gaze, unable to meet her eyes. He knew she was right, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was once again making decisions without him, that he was a mere spectator, in his own life. The situation with Michael brought their unresolved issues to the forefront. The lottery win, the secrecy, the resentment, it all bubbled to the surface, threatening to shatter the fragile peace they had so carefully constructed. One evening, as they sat in the hospital waiting room, the tension between them reached a breaking point. "Why, Ellie?" James asked, his voice raw with emotion. "Why did you have to keep it all from me? Why couldn't you trust me?" Eleanor, exhausted and emotionally drained, finally snapped. "Because I was afraid, James," she cried, her voice echoing through the quiet room. "I was afraid you wouldn't need me anymore, that you'd see me differently, that this money would change everything." Her outburst startled James, forcing him to confront the truth of her words. He realized that his own insecurities, his pride, had contributed to the rift between them. He had allowed his fear of inadequacy to overshadow his love for her, his trust in their bond. "Ellie, he began, but words failed him. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle and apologetic. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with regret. "I was wrong to doubt you, to question your love for me." Eleanor looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. In that moment, amidst the sterile environment of the hospital, surrounded by the fear and uncertainty of their son's condition, they found each other again. The walls they had built around their hearts crumbled, replaced by a renewed sense of understanding and compassion. They embraced, their tears mingling as they clung to each other, seeking solace in the midst of the storm. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that Michael's recovery would be a long and challenging journey. But they also knew that they would face it together, their love, their guiding light, their bond stronger than ever. The crisis with Michael served as a harsh but necessary catalyst. It forced them to confront their unresolved issues, to acknowledge the damage their secrecy and resentment had inflicted on their relationship. They realized that their love, their commitment to each other, was far more valuable than any amount of money. With renewed determination, they embarked on a journey of healing and reconciliation. They sought the help of a therapist, a wise and compassionate woman who guided them through the tangled web of their emotions. In the safe space of the therapist's office, they delved into the root of their conflict, exploring their individual fears and insecurities. Eleanor confessed her deep-seated fear of losing James, of being seen as nothing more than a source of wealth. James admitted his struggle with his pride, his fear of being overshadowed by her win. They learned to communicate openly and honestly, expressing their needs and vulnerabilities without fear of judgment. They rediscovered the power of empathy, learning to see the situation from each other's perspective. The therapy sessions were not always easy. There were moments of anger, of frustration, of tears, but with each session, they peeled back another layer of hurt, revealing the deep love and respect that still bound them together. They also began to rebuild their trust, brick by brick, through small acts of kindness and consideration. James took on more responsibilities around the house, showing Eleanor that he valued her contributions, regardless of their financial situation. Eleanor, in turn, involved James in her financial decisions, ensuring that he felt included and respected. They made a conscious effort to reconnect, to rekindle the spark that had dimmed during their period of estrangement. They planned date nights, revisited their favorite haunts, and rediscovered the joy of shared experiences. Slowly but surely, the chasm between them began to close. The laughter returned to their home, the silences were once again filled with comfortable companionship, and the touch of their hands was no longer hesitant but reassuring. They realized that the lottery win, while a significant event, did not define them. They were still Eleanor and James, the couple who had built a life together, brick by brick, on a foundation of love, trust, and mutual respect. The journey was far from over, but they were on the right path, their hearts open, their hands clasped tightly together. They knew that with patience, understanding, and unwavering commitment, they could overcome any obstacle, any storm that life threw their way. As Michael slowly recovered, a sense of gratitude washed over Eleanor. She realized that the lottery win, while initially a source of turmoil, had ultimately provided them with the means to give their son the best possible care. It had also, paradoxically, forced them to confront their own weaknesses and emerge stronger as a couple. One evening, as she sat by Michael's bedside, watching him sleep peacefully, an idea began to take shape in her mind. She had always been a compassionate woman, deeply involved in her community. Now, with the resources at her disposal, she felt a calling to do more, to make a real difference in the lives of others. She shared her thoughts with James, her voice filled with excitement and purpose. "I want to start a foundation," she explained, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "A foundation that helps people in need, people who are struggling, people who don't have the same opportunities we do." James listened intently, his heart swelling with pride. He saw the passion in her eyes, the genuine desire to make a positive impact on the world. He realized that this was not just a whim, but a calling, a way for her to find meaning and fulfillment beyond the material comforts of their newfound wealth. "That's a wonderful idea, Ellie," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I know you'll do amazing things." With James's unwavering support, Eleanor threw herself into the project. She researched foundations, consulted with experts, and assembled a dedicated team of like-minded individuals. She named the foundation the Willow Creek Community Fund, a tribute to the town that had been their home for so many years. The foundation focused on providing educational opportunities for underprivileged children, supporting local businesses, and assisting families facing financial hardship. Eleanor's passion and dedication were contagious, inspiring others to join her cause and contribute to the betterment of their community. The foundation's work brought a renewed sense of purpose to Eleanor's life. She found joy in helping others, in witnessing the positive impact of her efforts. The lottery win, once a source of conflict and anxiety, now served as a tool for good, a means to make a lasting difference in the world. James, witnessing her transformation, felt a surge of love and admiration. He realized that the woman he loved had not been changed by the money, but rather empowered by it. She had found her true calling, her purpose in life, and he was honored to be by her side, supporting her every step of the way. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with twists and turns, moments of despair and glimmers of hope. But through it all, Eleanor and James had emerged stronger, their love deepened by the trials they had faced. Eleanor, once burdened by secrecy and fear, had found her voice, her confidence, and her purpose. She had learned to embrace her newfound wealth, not as a source of personal gain, but as a tool to empower others and make a positive impact on the world. James, initially consumed by pride and resentment, had learned the importance of humility, communication, and trust. He had rediscovered the strength of their bond, the unwavering love that had sustained them through the storm. They had both grown individually and as a couple. They had learned to confront their fears, to acknowledge their vulnerabilities, and to communicate openly and honestly. They had rediscovered the power of forgiveness, the importance of empathy, and the enduring strength of their love. As they sat on their porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, they reflected on their journey. "We've been through a lot, haven't we?" Eleanor said, her voice soft and reflective. James nodded, taking her hand in his. "We have," he agreed, "but we made it through, together." "I'm so grateful for you, James," Eleanor said, her eyes sparkling with love and gratitude. "You never gave up on us, even when I made it so difficult." James smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I could never give up on you, Ellie," he replied. "You're my everything." They sat in comfortable silence, their hearts filled with a quiet joy. They had weathered the storm, emerged stronger, and found a new direction, a path paved with purpose and shared dreams. The lottery win, once a disruptive force, had ultimately brought them closer, revealing the true depth of their love and commitment. It had taught them the importance of open communication, the power of forgiveness, and the enduring strength of their bond. They had learned that true wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the love and support of those we cherish. They had discovered that happiness is not a destination, but a journey best traveled hand in hand with the one you love. As the years passed, the Petersons continued to live a fulfilling life, their love story a testament to the enduring power of human connection. They remained active in their community, their foundation a beacon of hope and opportunity for those in need. Their story served as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, Even when secrets and misunderstandings threaten to tear us apart, love can prevail. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of forgiveness, and the enduring strength of a love that has weathered the storm.